Tracy, you're here.
Here I am.
I'm so glad you're here.
Here I am.
I'm so glad that you're here and we get to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
It's really, really great. And I'm sure many of our listeners and our viewers are really wanting to just hear something on this topic.
Maybe.
Now, if you don't know, Tracy's awesome and her awesomeness can be found in other awesome ways, but we really want to focus on a deeper identity other than just what she does. As you hear her story, you hear the things that we kind of talk about today regarding womanhood, you'll hear kind of what she does, but more so why and who she is. And hopefully that is encouraging to you because personally, it is very encouraging to me.
Oh, yay. Hopefully.
Yay. So Tracy, first, where are you from? That kind of
Where
background.
am I from? Well, I like to say I'm from Miami because I've lived here the longest, but grew up in Maryland, in North Carolina, in the Philippines. My dad was in the military, so we were a little all over, but I've spent the most time in Miami.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So why do you choose Miami over all of those places?
Because it's the best.
Okay. It was a very simple answer. If you don't know, I am here in Miami and I agree. I'm from Dallas, born and raised. However, I do love Miami. So describe you said, your military family. Mm-hmm. So what was it like for you growing up, just general?
What was it like? I grew up very middle class family. Like that's because I always lived off of Air Force bases. So a lot of the families that I lived with or lived around were also military families. And it was really diverse. Everybody that was around me was, the families were mixed race or, because military men travel and such. And so it was just very apple pie. And just, we all sort of lived in these neighborhoods that when you envision a TV show of kids playing outside and everybody gets along and the parents sitting outside and everybody goes to the football game on Friday, that was sort of my childhood.
Yeah. And you have siblings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How many siblings? Tell us about that.
So I have an older half brother and half sister. My older half brother passed away a while back. And then I have a younger brother, and he lives in China.
That's super cool. Mm-hmm. Super cool. So that means that dad traveled a lot. Mm-hmm. It was you at home with family and like you said, the full dynamic. What was that like in just you developing Tracy, like for you?
Because my dad was a career military man and I was my father's first child, I think he put a lot of achievement responsibility on me that I think really carried into my adulthood. So, for example, I was doing long division at the dinner table at 4. Like he was like, "We're doing this.
No,
this is what we're doing."
Dora.
No, there was none of that. It was long
Sesame
division.
Street.
It was we are going to learn how to tell time with Roman numerals at 6. Like that's how I grew up. I was very inquisitive as a child. I would ask a lot of questions, and then on my 7th birthday, my dad bought me a set of encyclopedias because he was teaching me to research. I think probably because he didn't have the answers anymore. So he would be like, go look it up. And so he taught me how to look it up in these encyclopedias. It really grew my love of research and my love of learning, I think, because once I figured out, I can find the answer myself, it was a wrap after that.
Yes.
I was always looking for the answers.
So for our younger millennials and our Gen Z and below, this is pre-internet, right? Where the world isn't run by like clicking through things. So you really had to dig. That's pretty phenomenal. And I like how you said it taught you how to love to learn, to go and have even a type of independence. Like you could still be curious, but you yourself could go and find information. So with that, that's kind of the backdrop of just kind of like where you're coming from. What was that like in you thinking about adulthood? Did you think about adulthood when you were little?
I think as a child, I was forced to think about adulthood when people would bring it up, like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" That's always the question that everybody asks.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I don't like that question because that question doesn't allow for me to explore a feeling. It just allows for me to explore a being and tethering an identity to like a job. And so I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was always very good at school. I was always really like high achieving, always, had all of the checking the boxes off, so to speak, when it comes to what would make for a good adult.
Yeah.
But I really just didn't know what I wanted to be. And I would make it up every time. Oops, sorry, Will. every time people would ask me the question, I would just make up something. Oh, doctor, lawyer, you know, anything to sort of get people to stop asking me the question. Because I really didn't know. I think there was a part of me that knew I wanted to do something unconventional. I would probably do something unconventional or non-traditional, but I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. Did you, now again, like you said, there's that pressure that was always there, but did you think, okay, when I become an adult and I do this unconventional thing, that it's going to be something that I enjoy or something that I dread? Because you kind of shared that, and you know, I have this insatiable curiosity, and then I have this pressure, which sadly we put on all kids. I will not do that. Making a new declaration. But then now you're actually looking and thinking about your own adulthood. I'm going to be unconventional. What was the thought behind that?
I feel like, you know, if I look back at my, you know, 7-8-year-old self, I think I always knew that it would be something that I would like. I never envisioned a life that felt begrudging to live. And even, you know, through my early 20s and, you know, into career choices, I would look at the people that were ahead of me, like my bosses or whatever the case was, and I'd be like, I don't want that life. So no. And so there was a lot of time where I would make declarations around what I didn't want. Even if I still didn't know what I wanted, I could decide I don't want that. So even without true direction or without knowledge of where I was going to end up, I could very clearly state that I didn't want to be miserable.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I know this isn't only tied to just the occupation or what you want to dig your hands, sorry, Will, again, into what you want to do or be, but did you have an idea of who you wanted to become? And I'm going to leave that one kind of hanging, and then I have a follow-up question.
Who I wanted to become, I wanted to become something that I felt really early on was going to be impactful. I don't know. I couldn't explain it. Didn't know what it was. Wouldn't be able to say it. But I knew really pretty early as a child that I would do something that would impact other people. Yeah.
And for me, hearing that word impact, that can go from coaching and teaching, which is not a easy feat in and of itself, all the way to X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C of any type of influencer that you can think of. Did you automatically know that it was going to be on a bigger scale or more of a one-on-one? Did you have a thought with that?
As a child, bigger scale. I knew but again, there was no vision of like, I knew as a child it would be bigger scale. I think as I got older and through my teen years and into college, when you don't see it, you don't know what that can look like. Right. So it just started to form into whatever it formed into, and like jobs and things like that. But I think as a kid, if you would have asked my 4-year-old self, I would have been like, I'm on the stage.
Big. Yeah. I'm doing it.
I'm doing it.
Yes.
Very. Even though I was really shy. So I don't know why I would think that, because I was very shy as a kid. So
that's so funny. I love that. So here's the caveat. It's not really a caveat, but for the sake of this episode, it is a caveat. As a young girl leading into womanhood, were there any barriers or limits you put on yourself or others tried to put on you in light of you knowing I'm going to be unconventional, it's going to be big, et cetera, et cetera?
I think that people put the limitations of possibility onto, you know, like, which is why I never really shared any of this growing up, because I think I would just observe how people lived. And I observed that people just were not, like I told you, I grew up in a very middle class, you know, kind of situation. So I think that I would watch people and I would watch them not tap into anything bigger. And so I think the limitation was, if I tell somebody, they're going to say I can't do it. So I just never told anybody. So my younger brother, who knew at 10 years old what he wanted to do. Like, he was like, basketball is the way that we're going to do this. And at 10, he had made this declaration and had a whole plan, like really mapped out his whole life plan. And I watched him sort of really dive deep into what he wanted to do. And I also watched other people tell him that he couldn't. And then he just didn't care. Like, he was like, whatever. And then he really did get a chance to do everything that he kind of set out to do. And so that was in a way, an inspiration to me to be like, he just really does not care that these people are saying this is a 1 in a million shot that you're going to get a chance to play professional basketball. And he just didn't care. And he had people who were in his corner who really supported it, but a lot more people didn't, because it was, the limitations of our mind.
Yeah, for sure. And no one, or it's more of a question, did anyone specifically make your womanhood a limitation?
I don't think so. I think that, I want to say people would try, but again, I was so self-centered in a way, like so insular and self-centered that it really didn't matter. I can't remember a time where somebody would have said, well, because you're a woman, you can't do something. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I think I'm really grateful for my mom in that regard, because I don't think that, like, my mom never quelched any dreams of ours, especially considering how big my brother's dreams were. She was always like super supportive and like, yeah, you could do it. Just pray about it. Just pray about it. You could do it. So I really appreciate that because, she, being an immigrant, coming to a new country and having children and, things like that. Like, I think if anybody would have been the most influential in terms of limitation, it would have been her. And I didn't get that from her.
That's awesome. Because there's levels to that. It's not just occupation. It's not just, the steps that you take. Yeah. It's how you think. Mm-hmm. It's how you process. Mm-hmm. And, there's always personal, kind of like colorings to what happens in our story, and to say that that's a consistent thing from your mom. We love Mama Rose. So shout out to Mama Rose. So as we kind of like really, we're sharing more of your, hearing more of your story in regards to womanhood, how would you define it?
That's such a good question. And it's a question that I've been sort of playing with as society is kind of wanting to redefine these roles and things. It's like, well, what is a woman? Like, what makes a woman? Yeah. And the interesting thing is, to define it is, because you can define it biologically, you can define it with, roles. And I think this is what's really interesting about womanhood is, for many women, they do define themselves by the roles that they have. They're a wife, they're a mom, they're a daughter, they're a friend, they're an auntie, they're a sister. And so what is womanhood? I think womanhood is really powerful. I think I don't know that I have a true definition of it yet, but what I've come to realize is that it's really this powerful experience of creating life. Like, there's the masculine and then there's the feminine, and the feminine really is responsible for birthing. And I think that is so incredibly powerful. And I don't think society looks at it like that. Even when you look at derogatory terms in society, the derogatory terms are sort of like women based, right? And it's like, but women are actually quite powerful when you think about it. So I think womanhood is part of womanhood. I can't say this is a comprehensive definition, but part of womanhood really is the art of creating and birthing things. And what a powerful position to have in society that requires new ideas and people. Like you have to birth people. Yeah. And you can't have that without a woman.
Yeah. Because that was a good end to your thing. Yes, definitely the birthing of actual humans. But I like that you said things, because there is a way, no matter your personality, whether you can cook, and I'm bringing up normal social things that people, especially in America, that they say, oh, this is more effeminate, or this is what a woman does, quote unquote. That there is a way that we do things.
There is.
It's very powerful. And then both you and I, we're Black. Like, we have an ethnic story in our lineage and in our personal lives that add another weight and depth to that. So I'm glad that you said things. And I'm also thinking about the women and listeners and young girls who either don't have kids, can't have kids, that it's not just limited to that actual physical desire or physical like you've actually done it,
right?
To say that you are a woman or not, but it is such a design in how you bring something to life.
And to really own it, I think, right? Because for so long, people have diminished the, like, being a woman and how that is subpar. And so I like to tell the story. I was in a board meeting. I, was invited to be on the board of an organization. And this board, I mean, it's a great organization. They do really great things. And the board is, essentially men who are significantly older than me, and not the same race as me. And, we were having this get to know you time, and they were like, they said, well, what are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table here? And I could have listed a whole bunch of credentials. I could have been like, well, I have this many years in ministry, or I have this much experience in organizational leadership, or I have a degree in this. And my answer was literally, well, I'm Black. And I'm a woman.
Yes.
So that's enough.
There's that.
And that really does stand on its own.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people own the fact that being a woman, being a minority, you're a minority as a woman in general, but being a Black woman in particular is such a power play. Like, it is a big flex, because the way you think, the way you do things, the experience that you have, how you look at society, how you look at people, how you look at yourself, how you integrate all of those things in the decisions that you make and the things that you say and how you function, it really is different. And I wish that we would own that to the point that everybody recognizes how powerful of a position that is in our society.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I actually love that story. You called us and told us that. I cracked up. I was listening to a podcast, I think it was Tess Thompson and Kaya King, and they were talking about just their story and getting to know one another and networking. And at one point, Kaya King was just talking about the new company that they've created and how everything that they do with writing and their producers and what they offer to the people that come is an opportunity to tell stories without having the corporate conversation of diversity.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thank you for that. Like, imagine not having to come into that space, but to actually say, no, this is the world we live in. And that much more, as believers, you and I, we can say, this is the world that God made of these powerful beings of women, and then that, being minorities as well. I just loved how that was captured there. It's just that conversation shouldn't even need to exist.
Right.
Because of who we are. So,
and what the world looks like.
For sure. For sure. So with Womanhood, as we are, talking through just your story. And if you guys don't know, I rushed through the credentials a little bit, just because I want you to hear from her. But Tracy has her stuff together as far as the things that she's accomplished. So this isn't a knock on accomplishment. It's giving the why to why you have your accomplishments. Whether it's, I've always wanted to be a mom, I've always wanted to be a teacher, I've always wanted to be president, I've always wanted to be a janitor. That is not the full encompassing statement and the focus of today, but that womanhood would be elevated to what it is. It is a powerful picture of humanity, of God and his creativity, and it's powerful. It's not like sensitivity isn't, I am sensitive to something, so therefore I succumb to something. Sensitivity is that I am aware, and then any decision I make after that, you better watch out. Yeah, and we can make that that positive. So all of that with womanhood, what would you say to a young woman? I'm going to speak to our young crowd, a young woman who is trying to figure out who she is and what she's going to do. What would you say to her?
Yeah, well, I would say, first, God's call is progressive, and we don't learn the big picture in this isolated year of our life, right? Like, so whether you're 12, 13, 15, 17, 25, you're not going to know the fullness of what God has for you. As you're trying to grow, though, I would say allow for God to come through in ways that you didn't expect. Because sometimes we follow paths that are laid out for us, but aren't necessarily designed it's not designed for the path for us to be on, because we think that that's what life is supposed to be. And I think I did that for so long. But also knowing that in the doing of that, I was going to get somewhere, that God would at some point figure this out for me, and then I would get to where I'm going to go. But for the young women who are just, and I think now more than ever, so many young women want to grow up so quickly. Yeah. They just want to be adults. Like, listen,
no, don't do
right?
it.
And it's like there is nothing on this side of 25 that is that really that exciting. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, enjoy the spaces that you're in because you learn so much in those time frames. Seek other women who you appreciate, who you want to be like. I wish I would have had more of that, honestly, growing up, as I wish I would have had more women who were like had it all together in my eyes, or like people that I could have, and I did. I had great, aunts and things like that. But in terms of ambition, or in terms of like what I wanted to do with my life, I just didn't see it. And I think that's why it took me so long to be able to figure it out for myself, because ambition is predicated on exposure, and I wasn't exposed to a lot of different kinds of women. And I think now more than ever, even with social media, which can be a wonderful tool to use, you can be exposed to anything and everything, and every type of career, every type of being, every type of feeling, all the things. And under the guidance of, adults who care about you and who want to see, you flourish, and who want you to live your best life. I think all of those can be great tools. So just allow yourself to be in the moment and to be present, because the present moment is really all the power that you have. All you have is right now, right? I tell people this all the time. I say, the future is really easy to predict if you just figure out what are you doing right now to contribute to that. Learn, grow, enjoy, be young and fun, do dumb things that you learn from. I mean, within reason, because we all have had our share of decisions that were not the wisest choices in our early adulthood, and then learn from them, and then really make it a point to learn from them. I think that's the big key, is like actually learn from them
without condemnation,
without guilt, right? Without the guilt, without the shame. Give yourself an opportunity to be where you are, and don't try to be anything that you're not. Like, if you are 18, you don't need to be 30. Like, go ahead and be 18 and expect for that.
Restate what you just said. Ambition and exposure. How did you say it?
Ambition is predicated on exposure. If you don't see it, then you don't know it exists. So therefore you can't be it. And this was me. This is why I said it took me a good amount of time to figure out what I want to do with my life, because I just wasn't exposed to, as an entrepreneur, or I wasn't exposed to that. I was exposed to a working class, family structure, neighborhood structure, which is great. And I love that. And I don't condemn that at all, because if that is your calling, that is your calling. There are people, we need all the pillars of society to exist. We need people to work at Target and to be doctors, and we need people to be professors, and we need people to be accountants. And we also need people to be entrepreneurs and to pursue enterprise. But I wasn't exposed to the enterprise side of things. I was only exposed to go to school, get a job. And while it was great and I loved it, and as a learner, I would go back to school today. I was just telling somebody, I was like, I would go get a law degree if I could do it online. I just don't have the time and space to be in a classroom, but I would do it today if I could, because I love learning. But I wasn't exposed to other ways that success could be presented, like career success, or even life success, because so many people, they pin success to what it is you do with your life, like what job you have, or how far you've climbed up on a ladder, or how much money you're making. And so I wasn't exposed to alternative methods other than, go to school, get a job.
Yeah. And just in case you didn't get what she said, if your hobby isn't wanting to go to law school online, like if that's not your aspirational, then you're wasting your life. I'm totally joking. But I just had a thought. We are millennials, and we are stepping into a lot of the sacrifice that baby boomers went through. You talk about immigrants as well. And like it almost can feel damning to not follow in the path that is the best, like you said, but really saying, no, if I am a woman and I do have this power that reflects God and his creativity and who he is and all of these things, then there is so much ahead of me. And I don't have to be condemned by my wrong choices for the perfectionists out there. That's really, really good.
Yeah, and now more than ever, in human history, women have the opportunity to really explore what God is calling them to do. Like, more than any other time in human history, if a woman is called to be a surgeon, you can. Where 100 years ago, that was not a possibility. You were denigrated to being a nurse at best, you know, in time of war.
And then sneaking to do the things that you know how to do.
If you want to be an artist, if you want to be an actor, if you want to be a teacher, teacher, if you like now more than ever, women have the opportunity to do those things and contribute to the conversation. So you're not just given, well, you can be a teacher, a secretary, or a nurse. Done. Like those are the only careers of your choice. Now you can choose anything, and you have an opportunity to actually speak into where it goes next. And I think that, again, a very powerful position to be in, where we didn't have this, even just 50 years ago. But now women are vice presidents, women are CEOs of major companies, women are in politics, and they're still able to do the other things. And if anything, I mean, women really are superheroes, because they're out here being moms and everything, and being vice presidents, and being CEOs of companies, and still able to sort of do all of the other stuff too. And for women who do pursue more activity outside of the home like that, like, I just hope that they're not feeling guilty for it, because a lot of times they do, like, oh, I can't be with my kids, I can't be with my family as much as I would like to. You have to just trust that God's calling you to do something great, and he's making it all work.
That is for sure a guilt one that I've personally experienced and battle with in making sure that what is true is what stands up against those feelings. Because, I mean, work-life balance and figuring out the rhythms is a real thing, but actually still doing it and believe that your kids' stories are being written, that's a whole nother episode. Whole nother episode. So I did want to ask you this. This is part of our mindful momentums. This is a challenge to us, you and I, but then also to the listeners and viewers, that if you pause, then you're able to move. So pause, then move. So it's a mindful momentum. It should be something that you reflect on to push you forward. My question for this, and you feel free to add anything else you want. I mean, if you hadn't gotten enough stuff that you already wanted to hear. What myth have you encountered about womanhood, and or you believed yourself that you are like, I am determined to tear this bad boy down?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of them. One of them is that there is, in fact, a glass ceiling. I think that is, I mean, it exists in society, right? I mean, society has experienced it, but I think for me, I'm always determined to be like, I'm not available for that. Like, I'm just not going to participate in that. And it's really about when people say that you can't have something. I have this really funny story I tell sometimes from the stage, but one time Mao and I we were at Wendy's, like it was like late night. We're going to Wendy's, and Mao's like, Mao's favorite condiment is ranch. So we're in the drive-through line, and she's like, oh, get ranch. And so I asked the woman when I get to the drive-through space, I said, can we have ranch? And she goes, no, you cannot have ranch. And I said, I'm sorry. We would like ranch. Like, do you not have ranch? Like, I'm certain that there is ranch in this facility. Right. She was like, oh, because you have to pay for it. And I was like, okay, let's lead with that. Next time, lead with this is how you can acquire the ranch dressing. 25 cents, $5, I don't care. Like, but for me, so it's really that. It's when people tell me that I can't do something, I will do it, and I will figure it, because there's always a way. Like, there's always a way. I mean, we live in, a beautifully created world for us to be able to explore. So there's just always a way. So I think in terms of people saying that you can't do something, which is why I think the glass ceiling to me is simply a myth, because I'm just not going to participate. Like, you can create whatever societal norms you want to. I get to choose how I'm going to participate in that experience, and I'm choosing not to. Yeah. So I will not be participating in your glass ceiling. And that's just that. It's a choice. It's a decision.
There it is. That is your mindful momentum for today. Please make sure that any glass ceiling that you come up against, whether it is one to acknowledge, it is not the one that you live with. You are women. You are free. You are beautiful in Jesus' name. And you can do anything. Literally anything. Anything. Tracy, thank you so much for your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you for this.
I love hearing her story. I mean, she's my friend, so I know this stuff. But I love sharing this with just beautiful storytellers in my life that tell exactly what it looks like to look for hope between moments. Maybe this is your moment. Don't leave this time here with just happy smiles. Go do some reflecting and move forward. That's it.
Forward.